My name is Ebele Okon, and for most of my life, I believed that love, real love, was measured not in words but in sacrifice. I was born in Benin City, Nigeria, in a small house full of loud cousins and the smell of fried yam and palm oil. My father was a teacher. My mother sold tomatoes at the market. We had little, but we shared everything. That's how I was raised. You give what you have, even if it costs you everything. I moved to the United States when I was 41. My husband, Nosa, had passed from a sudden illness, and I didn't want my son growing up with only stories of opportunities. I wanted him to live them, so I brought Darian here. He was just a boy then, wide-eyed, clinging to my dress at the airport, too tired to cry but too afraid to let go. I worked as a bookkeeper in a small auto shop in Memphis. Not glamorous, but steady. I was good with numbers, and I made every dollar stretch. I didn't buy new shoes unless the soles gave out. I brought food from home instead of eating out. I clipped coupons like scripture. Every extra cent I saved I tucked away for Darian's future. A better college, a better car, a better start than I ever had. And he did well, my Darian. He graduated, got a job, met a girl named Mara, a soft-spoken nurse with long lashes and a careful smile. When they married, I cried. Not from sadness, but from the relief of knowing my son would never walk alone in this world. A few years after the wedding, they had a child, Kai. I became a grandmother, and around that time they came to me with their plan. "Mom," Darian said one evening, "we're outgrowing the apartment. Kai needs space." And Mara found this place, a small house in a quiet neighborhood. "It's perfect." I nodded, smiling, but I already knew what was coming. He looked nervous. "There's just one problem," Mara added gently. "The down payment is, well, we're short. And with my maternity leave and daycare costs," I stopped her with a wave of my hand. "I'll help," I said, just like that. No hesitation. It wasn't a question of whether I could. It was a decision I had made long ago, that if Darian ever needed me, I'd be ready. I had saved for decades. I had no vacations, no fancy clothes, no retirement plan beyond a modest pension. This money was my cushion for old age, my security. But what good is security if your children are drowning in stress? So I told them I would give it all, the full amount. They cried. Darian kissed my hand. Mara hugged me so tight I thought she might crack my ribs. And then I made a suggestion. "I don't want to live alone anymore," I said. "Let's share the house. I can help with the baby. I'll cook. We'll be a proper family under one roof." They agreed, eagerly. The idea of a multi-generational home warmed me. It reminded me of the way we lived back home in Nigeria. One house, many hands, elders passing down wisdom, children growing up with stories and stew and supervision. It felt right. We went to see the house together. It was small but full of light. 3 bedrooms upstairs. A finished guest unit off the side near the garage. "You can stay here," Mara said. "It's like a suite, your own space." I nodded. It was cozy, not what I had dreamed of for myself, but I wasn't looking for luxury. I was looking for togetherness, and I thought I'd found it. At the signing, when the lawyer asked about the deed, Mara placed her hand lightly on my shoulder. "For tax reasons," she said. "And mortgage simplicity, it's best if just our names are on the title. It's only paperwork. Nothing changes." I looked at Darian. He avoided my eyes but gave a small nod, and in that moment I quieted the little voice in my head, the one that wanted me to ask questions, the one that reminded me how much money I was putting in, the one that said, "Put your name down too." But I was a mother. I wasn't buying a share of a company. I was giving a gift to my family. I signed. I handed over the check, all of it. And I moved into the little guest unit that evening with a pot of egusi soup in one hand, and my Bible in the other. That was the beginning. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't moving into a home. I was stepping into a story where I would give everything, and later be told I had no place at all. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. I settled into the guest unit that first week, like a woman trying to convince herself she was lucky. It's private, I told myself as I unpacked my clothes into the shallow closet. It's peaceful, I said as I ate dinner alone while upstairs they passed plates and laughed. It's modern, I whispered as I heard my grandson cry through the thin walls, but wasn't called up to help. Darian and Mara didn't mean harm. Not at first. They were simply swept up in their own new life, new routines, new parenthood, new responsibilities. And I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't knock unless they invited me. I didn't ask for anything. I told myself that this was the American way. Boundaries, independence, everyone in their space. But in my heart, I missed being part of something fuller, something warmer. Still, I gave it time. I cleaned my little kitchen corner. I bought fresh curtains. I even planted herbs in old tins on the side porch. And I kept doing what mothers do. I showed my love through doing, not demanding. Every morning I'd be up by 6. I'd go upstairs, prepare Kai's bottle, start the kettle, fold laundry that had been sitting in the basket for 2 days. I became part of the rhythm of their house again, just quietly, invisibly. When Mara went back to work, it was me who stayed with Kai. I fed him, sang to him, took him on long walks in his stroller. He started calling me Yaya before he said Mama. I kept their house full of food, of order, of care, and yet I wasn't on paper. Not on the mortgage, not on the title, not on any lease. There was no record of me. It hadn't bothered me at first. But slowly I began to feel like a ghost inside the walls of a house I helped build. One day I overheard Mara on the phone, in the kitchen. Yes, it's just the two of us and our little one, she said, her voice light. No in-laws. Thank God, right? She laughed. I stood by the staircase, out of sight, a tea towel still damp in my hand. I wasn't angry. I was something else, like a coat forgotten in the closet of someone else's life. That night I brought it up gently. I heard what you said, Mara, about there being no in-laws. She looked surprised, then gave me a quick smile. Oh, it was just for the insurance paperwork. You know how it is? It's simpler. Simple. That word again. That same word they used when they said I shouldn't be on the deed. That same word they used when they promised me, this is your home too, Mama. But there's a difference between being welcomed and being documented. There's a difference between a family member and a favor. And I had no paper proof of where I stood. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I did what I always did. I kept records, quietly, carefully. I had a drawer where I stored receipts, grocery runs, utility bills, diapers, formula, shoes. I didn't know why I was doing it. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of fear. Maybe because I was starting to realize that love, real love, shouldn't have to be proven. But sometimes you need the proof anyway. Mara and Darian didn't treat me cruelly, not yet. But their language started to shift. Mara stopped calling me Mama and started using my first name around her friends. They started referring to my room as the unit when they spoke about the house. And once when Darian was talking to a mortgage advisor on speakerphone, he said, "Oh, it's just me, my wife, and our son. My mother lives with us, but it's not legally tied. She's not a co-owner, or anything like that. Not legally tied." That phrase stuck with me like a splinter. I was the one who made this house possible. My savings, my trust, my years. But in their eyes, on their paperwork, I was just a guest. Not on paper, not protected, not permanent. Still, I told myself to endure. Because this was family. Because I believed that love meant patience. That one day maybe they'd say, "We want to add you to the deed, Mama. You've done so much." But they never did. And what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that a house you helped build can still become a place where you're unwelcome. Not all exile begins with a fight. Some starts with a smile, and a signature missing from the title. They never asked me to become the backbone of their household, but that's what I became. There was no schedule, no list of duties, no thank you notes taped to the fridge. It just happened the way dust settles quietly over time until one day the whole house stands on it without noticing. In the beginning, I told myself I was helping out just for a few months, just until Mara got back on her feet, just until Kai started daycare. But one season turned into the next. One chore turned into 20. Mara would leave early for work. I'd be the one to dress Kai, braid his hair, tuck little snacks into his bag. When he cried in the night, it was my door he knocked on. Not his parents. Mine. Always mine. I knew the rhythms of their house better than they did. I knew which drawer the good scissors were in. I knew when the boiler needed resetting. I knew which night the bins had to go out and how to reset the Wi-Fi router when it blinked wrong. And I never stopped giving. When Mara's car needed repairs, I wrote the check. When Darian's hours were cut one winter, I covered the electricity bill so they wouldn't fall behind. When Kai outgrew his shoes faster than expected, it was my pension money that bought the new ones. I never called it rent. I never called it help. To me, it was love. Every week I bought groceries. I clipped coupons. I looked for sales. My cart was full of the things they liked. Not me. Almond milk for Mara. Organic cereal for Kai. Frozen chicken strips. Darian always tossed into the oven on tired nights. I cooked every meal. Breakfast with steaming oats. Dinners that smelled of home. Spicy jollof. Roasted plantains. Soft yams with egusi. Dishes Kai once asked me to pack in his lunch so his friends could taste Yaya's food. And after meals, while they sank into the couch with their phones, I washed the plates. Not once did they say, "You don't have to," but not once did they say, "Thank you" either. I kept telling myself this was how families worked. Everyone playing a role. Mine just happened to be the quiet one. The sturdy one. But sometimes quiet starts to feel like erasure. I was always present, but never pictured. In every family photo that hung on the wall, I was behind the camera, not in front of it. At gatherings I served food, refilled drinks, picked up coats. People smiled and said I was such a blessing. But no one asked if I was tired. No one asked if I was okay. And still, I stayed silent. I swept floors I didn't walk on. I cleaned rooms I was never invited into. I paid for comforts I didn't use. Once I noticed the thermostat was turned up during a snowstorm. I smiled, remembering how cold the house used to be, before I took over paying the winter bills. Another time, I saw an Amazon package addressed to Mara, a luxury face cream. The price still on the box. It cost more than my monthly arthritis medicine. Still, I didn't say a word. Because this is what mothers do. We carry, we provide, we disappear behind the good we create. But sometimes at night, I sat in my small room near the garage and wondered, if I stopped, if I didn't wake up early, if I didn't pay the bills, if I didn't clean or cook, or pick up Kai from school, would they even notice? Or would they simply say, "What happened to the hot meals? Why's the laundry piling up? Did Yaya forget to pay the power bill?" And would they say it with annoyance, instead of concern? I began to write everything down. Not out of bitterness. Out of habit. I made columns. Groceries. Utility bills. Repairs. Clothing. I stapled receipts together by month. I filed them into folders. It was something I did quietly, while the rice boiled, or while Kai napped. I told myself I was just being organized. But deep inside, some quiet part of me, the old bookkeeper was whispering, "This story may need evidence one day." Because the truth was, I was part of that house. I was its quiet, invisible architecture. And the longer I lived there, the more I realized, if a house stands on a backbone, you better pray it never breaks. It was a Tuesday morning, I remember, because I had just come back from the pharmacy, my small paper bag of prescriptions swinging gently by my side as I walked down the sidewalk toward our house. I was humming something soft, maybe a hymn from my childhood. The sun was warm on my back, and I had picked up a small treat for Kai. He'd been having a hard week at school, but as I turned the corner, my feet stopped moving. There, planted right in the middle of our front yard, was a real estate sign, large, bold, shiny, and at the top, smiling in the corner of the board like it was a magazine cover, Mara, her name printed in clean black letters, Realtor. Agent, seller. I stood frozen. The plastic bag in my hand suddenly felt 10 times heavier. For a moment, I thought maybe it was for the neighbor's house. Maybe it was a mistake. But it wasn't. It had our house number, our lawn, our door. My knees felt hollow as I walked up the driveway and into the house. The front door was unlocked, like it always was. Inside, everything looked normal. The same pile of shoes near the stairs, the same hum of the fridge, the same silence from upstairs. Except now the air felt unfamiliar. I found Darian in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee in his hand, scrolling on his phone. "There's a sign," I said quietly. "On the lawn." He didn't even look up. "Oh," he mumbled. "Yeah, that. Don't worry about it, Mama. Don't worry." He looked up then. His face was tired, eyes half closed. "It's nothing serious. Mara's just testing the market. You know how hot it is right now." "But why wouldn't you tell me?" I asked. "This is our house." He hesitated, then gave a little shrug. "We didn't want to stress you. It's not a real sale yet. It's just an appraisal, really. An appraisal. A test. A formality." They were saying the words softly, but I could feel the truth hiding underneath them like a splinter. You don't test the market by putting a professionally printed sign on the lawn with smiling headshots and an agent's number. You don't keep it a secret from the woman who lives under your roof unless there's something you're trying to hide. Still, I nodded slowly and walked away. But something had shifted inside me. Not rage, not even sadness. Just a deep, slow burn of knowing. A few days later, it got worse. It was a Saturday. Darian came down to my unit in the morning with a fake bright smile. "Mama," he said, "Mara and I are taking Kai to the park. It's just a little family thing. You should rest today, okay? We'll be gone all afternoon." He kissed the top of my head like I was some fragile old doll and left. It stung a bit. I loved the park. I loved watching Kai feed the ducks. But I told myself maybe they just needed a day to themselves. Parents need alone time too, right? So I took a long walk. I bought myself a meat pie from the bakery 2 streets over and sat on a bench near the school, watching the children ride their bicycles. When I came back 2 hours later, the driveway was full of strange cars, big, shiny, expensive cars, and I heard voices, laughter, footsteps. I walked up the front path and reached for the door. It was locked, dead-bolted. I knocked gently. Nothing. Then harder. Still nothing. So I stepped to the side window and looked in. My heart dropped. The living room was full of strangers. Couples walking around, peeking into closets, running their hands across countertops. And there, in the middle of them all, guiding them like a host at a party, Mara, clipboard in hand, smiling wide. She was giving a full tour. It was an open house, and they had sent me away so I wouldn't be seen. I tapped on the glass, once, twice. She looked up. Our eyes met, and just for a second her smile slipped. Her face changed. She looked afraid. Then she turned away and kept talking, pretending I wasn't there. I went to the front door again, opened the mail slot. "Kai," I whispered. "It's Grandma." A small face appeared. "My grandson." "Grandma," he whispered, panicked. "I'm not supposed to let you in." Daddy said. I felt my chest tighten. He said it might confuse the buyers. I stood there, frozen, not a guest, not a family member, a problem, a liability, someone to be hidden like clutter before company arrives. I backed away from the door, walked down the steps, and stood on the sidewalk, staring at a house I no longer recognized. It was the same walls, the same paint, the same roof I helped pay for, but suddenly it didn't feel like home. It felt like a house for sale that had no place for me in it. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel used. I felt awake. The day after the open house, the silence was louder than usual. Mara and Darian didn't mention it. Not one word, no apology, no explanation. Just soft smiles over breakfast and conversations that tiptoed around the truth like it wasn't standing in the room with us. I didn't bring it up either. Not yet. I was still reeling, not from the secrecy, but from the shame. The kind of shame you feel when your name is whispered through a mail slot like a stray dog trying to come inside. Still, I tried to convince myself it had been a mistake, a misstep, a one-time thing. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, it happened again. But this time, it wasn't just secrecy, it was cruelty. That morning, Darian told me they were taking Kai to his classmate's birthday party across town. He said the drive would be long and the place would be crowded. "You'd be bored, Mama," he said with a soft chuckle. I nodded. I didn't want to force myself into places I wasn't welcome. I stayed home. I baked, cleaned. I watered the plants and swept the front step. When I finished, I thought I'd go out for a walk. The sun was high and I needed air. But when I reached for the front door, the knob didn't turn. I jiggled it gently. Still locked. I looked down. The deadbolt was thrown. I frowned, confused. They'd never locked the door before. I reached for my keys, but I didn't have one for the main door, only for my unit. I had never needed it before. I knocked lightly, then harder. No answer. So I walked around the house to the side, peeking through the windows. And there they were, people again. Another open house. Mara once again walking couples through the living room, pointing at furniture, smiling that wide, practiced smile. I saw someone pick up the photo of Kai and me from the mantel and tilt it sideways. A second later, I saw Mara take it from their hands gently and slide it into a drawer. Hide the grandmother. Again, I knocked on the side glass. Not desperate this time, just tired, calm. Our eyes met, but this time she didn't even flinch. She didn't wave. She didn't shake her head. She just turned and kept walking. Like I wasn't there at all. I stood still for a moment, then walked to the back, where my little garden was, my herbs, my bench, my quiet place. But even from there, I could still hear laughter inside the house. Laughter from strangers walking across floors I had mopped, sitting in chairs I had dusted, admiring a kitchen I had cooked 10,000 meals in. They were preparing to hand it over to someone else, and I was the dust they were trying to wipe away before the handoff. That night they came home late, pretended nothing had happened. I didn't pretend. "You locked me out," I said quietly. Mara looked at Darian. Darian looked down at his phone. "For safety," he mumbled. "We can't have people walking in and out while we're showing the place." "You didn't show me," I said. "You didn't tell me. You didn't even give me a key." "It's not your house," Mara said suddenly. Her voice was sharp. Too sharp, like it slipped out before she meant it to. Then silence. Thick, heavy, final. She didn't apologize. She just picked up a cup, walked to the sink, and turned on the tap like the conversation never happened. I walked back to my unit and sat on my bed. For the first time in years, I didn't cry. I reached for the box beneath my bed, the one filled with receipts, bills, old notes scribbled on the backs of envelopes. I opened it, and I remembered something my father used to say when I was a girl. Kindness without record is holy, but when people take advantage, record everything. I stared at the stack of utility bills with my name on them, the grocery receipts, the bank slip with the original wire for the down payment, and I felt something shift. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This wasn't confusion. This was insult. They weren't just ignoring me now. They were erasing me, and if they wanted to act like I was a burden, a tenant, a freeloader, then I would answer them. Not as a mother, as an accountant. What happened at the kitchen table, the same table where I had rolled out dough for Kai's birthday pies, the same table where I had served them soup when Mara was sick, the same table where for years I had sat quietly listening, helping, offering, giving. They sat across from me now like a committee, 2 printed spreadsheets, 1 calculator, 0 shame. Mama, Darian began, too soft, too polite. "We've been looking at the numbers, and with everything going on, the sale, the move, we need to tighten things." I just watched him, not angry, not sad, just waiting. "We were wondering," he continued, glancing nervously at Mara, "if for the next month or 2 until we close, if you could maybe chip in a little something, for rent." My hands were folded. My chest was still, but inside a small flame sparked. Rent, I repeated. Mara leaned forward, her tone sweet and businesslike. Just utilities, really. Water, gas. You do use the washer, the lights. You know how bills add up. You know how bills add up. Yes, I did. I knew it better than anyone at that table. I had paid those bills for years. Silently. Every winter gas bill that kept their 6-bedroom house warm. Every grocery run that filled their pantry when their paychecks didn't stretch. Every diaper, every cough syrup, every emergency plumber visit. I had covered all of it. Not once had I said, "You owe me," because it wasn't a transaction. It was love. And now they were handing me a spreadsheet, like I was a stranger, like I was the one draining their resources. Mara's voice sharpened just a touch. You've been staying here without paying rent for over a decade, Ebele. We just thought. She said my name like it was a formality, like I was a tenant, a liability, a placeholder. Not mama, not Yaya, just Ebele. That was the moment something inside me went very quiet. Not broken, just silent. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. I nodded once, a small agreeable gesture. I understand, I said. Mara looked pleased. Darian looked relieved. They thought they had won, that I had accepted my place. Downstairs, out of sight, paying rent on a house I helped buy. But what they didn't know was this. That same night, I took out my ledger, 15 years of records. Receipts, bills, transfer slips, bank statements, neat, chronological, bulletproof. I pulled out the heating bills, every one addressed to me. I pulled out the grocery receipts, with my pension card number on the bottom. And then I opened the fireproof box under my bed. Inside it, the original bank statement showing the wire transfer I made for the down payment. The 6 figures that drained my retirement savings, so they could have a forever home. And beside it, the document from the lawyer's office. The one I had signed. The one that called my contribution a gift. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it gently on the table and wrote one word in my notebook. Mistake. But that mistake would be corrected. Not through shouting. Not through begging. Through evidence. Through law. I had spent my life in balance sheets and ledgers. And if they wanted to reduce our relationship to a bill, then I would give them a bill. Not for groceries. Not for heating. Not even for 15 years of childcare and service. No, I would give them a bill for the house. For the bricks. For the deed. For the roof over their heads. They wanted to play landlord. They were about to learn who really owned the property. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. I listed every date, every dollar, every service. And I made one final entry in my ledger. Pending reckoning. They thought I had accepted defeat. After the rent talk, they walked lighter, smiled more, even joked about new paint colors for the next house, a bigger one, a better one. Without me, of course. Mara started referring to her listings as our portfolio. Darian began calling their move an upgrade. And me? I was just figuring things out. They didn't ask where I was going. They didn't care. But that was fine, because while they celebrated their imaginary future, I was in my room building something very real, my case. I pulled the blackout curtains, laid out the ledgers across my desk, opened the file folders I'd kept sealed for years, the ones I used to label with quiet dignity, household expenses, groceries, utilities, caregiving. I went line by line. Every grocery trip I'd paid for, every electricity bill I'd covered, every winter heating charge, bank transfer, school supply, and then the heart of it all, the wire transfer. The day I liquidated my entire retirement account and sent the funds to the escrow company. A down payment that bought the house, not part of it. The house, they called it a gift, but no gift should come with betrayal wrapped inside it. I calculated everything. Principal, contributions, estimated appreciation of the property over 15 years. I pulled real estate reports from our zip code, compared the original sale price with the current listing. And what I found was clear. 80%. That's how much of the current home value had originated from my down payment and documented financial support. 80%. Not a roommate, not a tenant, not a burden. I was the investor, the primary one, and they were living on my investment like it was owed to them by birthright. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me focused. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Esther, a woman from my church circle. Her niece worked for a lawyer who handled elder law cases, discreetly, fiercely. I called the office and made an appointment. When they asked where I'd like to meet, I didn't say my home. I didn't say my son's house. I said, let's meet at the library, neutral ground. When I met the attorney, a calm, serious woman named Juliet, she didn't ask for my story first. She asked for my proof. I handed her the receipts, the spreadsheets, the binder with every utility statement, the deed paperwork, the original bank statement showing the full wire. She flipped through the pages slowly, no surprise in her eyes, just quiet fury. Mrs. Okon, she said softly, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is financial elder exploitation. And you've kept the kind of records most lawyers can only dream of. She laid out the strategy. We wouldn't fight for reimbursement. That would be too small. We would argue for ownership, a legal tool called a constructive trust, where the court could recognize that, regardless of what the paperwork said, the house was purchased with my money and maintained through my ongoing financial support. In other words, on paper it may say Darian and Mara, but in truth, the house was mine. I remember asking her one question: if we do this, what happens next? She paused, then answered with no emotion: they'll lose the house. I nodded once. That night I returned home, if I could still call it that. I sat with Kai while Mara went out for a showing. We played quietly. He still called me Yaya, still held my hand like he used to as a toddler. I kissed his forehead and tucked him in, and then I went back to my room and locked the door. They thought they'd kicked me out. They thought they'd cornered me, but I had built a fortress out of numbers, receipts, and facts. They just didn't know it yet. The reckoning was no longer pending. It had a court date. They had no idea what was coming. To them, I was still just the quiet woman in the corner of the house they were already calling their former property. I had made no fuss when they asked for rent. I had not raised my voice after being locked out. I smiled when they talked about their fresh start. They mistook my silence for surrender, but it wasn't silence. It was precision. I waited while they accepted a high offer from a young couple with 2 kids and a golden retriever. Waited while they toasted in the backyard with glasses of cheap champagne, clinking bottles over grilled chicken and shallow dreams. I was there too. Not invited, but not excluded either. They needed me to smile, to play the part of the sweet old mother who'd be moving out soon. They told their guests I had found a nice little place in a senior community. I nodded politely. I watched, I listened, and I waited. 2 days before closing, just as they began packing boxes and booking movers, the doorbell rang. Mara answered it. A tall man in a navy suit stood on the porch with 2 thick envelopes. Ebele Okon? He asked. I stepped forward. Yes, I said, calm, steady. He handed me both envelopes. One for me, one for them. I thanked him. And then, without ceremony, I walked into the backyard where their friends were still drinking and laughing, where Darian was flipping burgers and pretending everything in his world was under control. I handed him the envelope. This is for you. He opened it. I watched his face drain as he scanned the first page. I saw Mara walk over, take the papers from his hand, and freeze mid-sentence. Emergency injunction? She hissed. On what grounds? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Everything was written clearly. The evidence, the timeline, the legal claim that the house was never truly theirs. I turned and walked back inside. They didn't follow me. They were still frozen, holding the weight of their own actions in their hands. That night, they still held their dinner party. They couldn't cancel. Too many guests. Too much pride. They insisted I come, even though it was clear by then that I was no longer a burden to be hidden. I was a threat they needed to keep close. I wore a simple blue lace dress, the one my sister had sent from home years ago, the one I'd saved for something meaningful. They sat me at the far end of the long table, near a child's booster seat, as always, present but pushed aside. Mara and Darian laughed louder than usual. They spoke about new beginnings. They didn't mention court dates or injunctions. Not yet. But I saw the tension under their smiles. I saw their hands tremble just slightly when they lifted their wine glasses. Near the end of the meal, Darian stood. A toast, he said, voice raised, to new chapters, new homes, new memories. Everyone clapped. And across the table, Mara leaned in and muttered to the woman next to her, just loud enough for me to hear, "We just thought it was time to move on," and for others to do the same. Her eyes flicked toward me, and I smiled. Not with bitterness, not with triumph, with clarity. They didn't know that the house they had packed into cardboard boxes was no longer theirs. They didn't know that the judge had already read our filings, that the case had already moved fast because the evidence was overwhelming, that a constructive trust was about to be imposed, and title transferred. Not tomorrow, not in months. Now. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to prove my place anymore, because the papers did it for me. 3 weeks later, the court ruled. The title was mine. The judge didn't hesitate. The case was clean. They had taken money under false pretenses. They had hidden behind love to enrich themselves. And they had made the mistake of doing it to a woman who had written everything down. The house was awarded to me in full. When I returned with the official order, Mara was sitting on the floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Darian stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. "You have 30 days to vacate," my lawyer said. Calm, direct. Darian looked at me with glassy eyes. "Mama, you can't do this. Where will we go?" I looked at him, my son, my boy, the man I had crossed an ocean for, and felt nothing, no hate, no revenge, just a deep, aching end. "You wanted me gone," I said quietly. "Now I'm the only one who gets to stay." I didn't move back in. I sold the house, the one I had built, paid for, kept standing, and with that money, I did what I should have done long ago. I booked a flight, not to a senior home, not to a rented flat, to Benin City, home. I landed with 2 suitcases, a restored bank balance, and a heart finally free. I wasn't running from anything. I was walking towards something: peace, soil, memory. In my purse was the photo of Kai as a baby. On my finger, a silver ring my mother gave me when I was young, with a simple engraving on the inside. A mother's hand is never empty. They tried to take everything from me, but they forgot one thing. I keep receipts.